I have a relationship with people who want to hear what I think is the truth, and I'm going to present both sides. And they may not be fair and balanced. There may not be equal weight put to each side, because that's not what the truth is. The truth isn't always 50-50.
Right.
So I live with that, but it gets more difficult because we're so tribal now.
Donald Trump has spent a lot of time criticizing you. You told me a couple years ago on air that you were afraid of what Trump could theoretically do if he ever were returned to the White House. How do you feel now?
Yeah, it's possible. Do I think he's going to start arresting comedians? I don't.
Of all the woke media darlings who've been sliced and diced by Bill Maher's razor-sharp wit, few have taken a beating. Quite like CNN's Jake Tapper, their recent fallout wasn't just a spat. It was a full-blown ideological clash that sent shockwaves through cable news and left woke warriors clutching their soy lattes in distress. We got every juicy detail. So buckle up. This is going to be a wild ride.
You say that Trump, quote, got the White House again, but he isn't going to get your mind. There are probably a lot of viewers that want to hear what you mean by that and how you want to achieve that.
So I'm not going to chase every rabbit down the hole like I did the first term. That's what I mean about he's not going to get my mind.
Jake Tapper kicked things off by trying to bait Bill Maher into launching into a good old-fashioned Trump roast classic. Tee up the topic, sit back, and wait for fireworks. But this time Tapper had another thing coming. Ma didn't bite. Instead, he coolly sidestepped the trap and made it clear he wasn't going to scrutinize Trump the way he did during the first turn. No explosive takedowns, no endless rant, just a quiet pivot that left Tapper visibly thrown off. So what gives his Maher had to change? Of hard about Trump, it's hard to say definitively, but something definitely feels different. The old Ma, the one who practically turned anti-Trump commentary into a full-time sport, will have seized a moment, roasted Trump to a crisp, and dropped a mic or two in the process. This Maher, however, seems less eager to play the predictable part. Is in game. Maybe he's grown weary of the echo chamber. Maybe he's realizing the audience is burned out on the same old outrage. Or maybe, just maybe, he's rethinking who the real threat to open dialogue actually is. Whatever the reason, Tapper didn't get a soundbite. He got silence. And in today's media circus, that silence spoke volumes.
I'm not going to pre-hate anything. I'm just going to hope for the best, and then when something serious happens, I'll comment on that. Otherwise, I have new rules and monologue as a place in the show every week to talk about invading Greenland and annexing Canada and other stuff that's perfect for comedy, but I'm not going to take it seriously.
You could see it all over Jake Tapper's face: confusion, frustration, maybe even a touch of panic. This wasn't the Bill Maher he thought he was booking. Tapper had clearly been expecting the old Maher, the rapid-fire, hard-hitting liberal comedian who could skewer Trump with surgical precision. But instead, he got a different Maher, fed-up, disillusioned Maher, who's grown increasingly tired of the nonsense brewing on the far left, and it showed Maher didn't come to play the partisan game. He came with a message. The left in his eyes has gone completely off the rails, consumed by identity politics, performative outrage, and ideological purity tests. And Maher's not having it. He looks around and sees a movement he once proudly stood with, now unrecognizable, drunk on its own self-righteousness. So now Maher's on what you might call a one-man mission, a solo crusade to purge the wokeness infecting his side of the aisle. He's not switching teams. He's not throwing red meat to the right. He's simply saying what many liberals are afraid to admit out loud, that the left's obsession with ideological purity is pushing people away. And if no one else is willing to call out, Maher's more than happy to go it alone.
An election book, and one of the things I just stumbled on was a monologue you gave in October 2023, in which you warned the Democratic Party of Ruth Bader Biden. You were saying the American people think he's too old. You're worried about this. You had a great line about it doesn't matter if he's a national treasure and has done great things. If you got on an airplane and you heard that Buzz Aldrin was the pilot, you'd get off. I'm sorry for botching your very funny joke. But they didn't listen to you, but you were proven correct.
Yeah, and I felt I had standing to make that case, because I had for so many years been the only person I know on television who was consistently railing against ageism.
Now, before we go any further, I made an observation that I just have to share. And trust me, it's a telling one. It seems like a growing number of prominent voices on the left are scrambling to cash in on Biden's election disaster. Yep, you heard. That right don't act surprised. Suddenly, everyone and their dog is writing a book about how the Democrats completely imploded at the November polls. And guess what? The recurring theme is Biden's age and declining mental acuity, the very same concerns they, once mocked, dismissed, and labeled as right-wing conspiracy theories, are now their golden ticket, the bestseller status funny. How that works, isn't it? When people like us raise legitimate questions about Biden's mental fitness, we were ridiculed, silenced, or outright called names racist, extremist conspiracy theorists. Take your pick. But now, with the political winds shifting and the election results smacking in the face, suddenly it's open. Season on Biden, the hypocrisy is staggering and the opportunism is shameless. They're not trying to save the party. They're just trying to save their careers one hot take at a time.
I have a relationship with people who want to hear what I think is the truth, and I'm going to present both sides. And they may not be fair and balanced. There may not be equal weight put to each side, because that's not what the truth is. The truth isn't always 50-50.
Right.
I live with that, but it gets more difficult because we're so tribal now.
I truly believe that if more media outlets embrace Bill Maher's approach telling the truth without picking sides, America would be in a much better place. Ma may be liberal, but he's one of the few willing to call out nonsense. No matter where it comes from, that's what journalism should be about: honesty over ideology, facts over feelings. Unfortunately, too many media houses today have become extensions of political parties tailoring their coverage to please their base instead of informing the public. That breeds division, distrust, and disillusionment. But imagine a media landscape where truth mattered more than tribal loyalty, where anchors, reporters, and hosts weren't afraid to challenge their own side. America doesn't need more propaganda. It needs more courage. And if every newsroom took a page out of Maher's playbook, we'd finally start having real conversations rooted in reality, not rehearsed talking points.
It was a case, okay, where Biden was too old. Having made that case that it's a case-by-case basis, I was now saying, yes, some of those cases are that the person just is too old for the job. And he was going to be, much like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, someone who was seen in history as one who stayed at the fair too long and cost his party dearly. And he did. And, I don't think history is going to treat Joe Biden kindly for doing.
Jake Tapper did his best to run interference for Joe Biden, defending the president with the classic talking point, age is just a number. He argued that Biden wasn't too old to run for re-election and pointed out that plenty of politicians older than Biden are still active and effective in public life. But Bill Maher wasn't having him out push back with surgical precision, stating that he doesn't judge age in broad strokes. He evaluates it case by case. And in Biden's case, the signs are hard to ignore. According to Maher, it's not about the number on the birth certificate. It's about the visible symptoms. Biden's awkward stumbles, verbal fumbles, and mental fog aren't just quirks, they're red flags. Whether Biden were 60 or 80 might argue the issue isn't age, it's capability. And the specific signs Biden is showing might indicate he's simply too old for the job. The presidency isn't a retirement hobby. Ma implied it demands sharpness, clarity, and energy. And right now, Biden isn't checking those boxes. So to finally get Bill Maher to play ball, tap her through another bait. Listen to this.
I've spent a lot of time criticizing you. You told me a couple years ago on air that you were afraid of what Trump could theoretically do if he ever were returned to the White House. How do you feel now?
Yeah, it's possible. Do I think he's going to start arresting comedians? I don't, but it's possible. And look, anything's possible with this guy. I'll put it this way. When George Bush was in the White House, it never even entered my mind. Never entered my mind that I couldn't say whatever I wanted to say without repercussions. And that's one of the great things about living in America. And we take America for granted and that kind of stuff. And maybe we can't anymore. So we'll see. But am I going to let it affect what I do? No. I mean, the day I feel like I can't say what I want without going to Guantanamo Bay.
At this point, I honestly started to feel a little embarrassed with Jake Tapper. I mean, come on, every baited hook he cast into the conversation came up empty. Not a single bite more wasn't just avoiding the traps. He was dancing around them with the kind of finesse and verbal precision that only he can deliver each time Tapper tried to steer the conversation toward a predictable anti-Trump tirade. Maher flipped the script and delivered a sharp, unexpected counterpoint. It was like watching a chess master play against someone who didn't realize they were in check 3 moves ago. If I were Tapper, I would have wrapped up the interview right then and there, cut to commercial, fake a satellite issue. Anything. The whole setup was designed to get Ma to dump on Trump, and instead Tapper found himself tangled in his own narrative. Ma wasn't playing team politics. He was calling out hypocrisy wherever he saw it, and in this case it wasn't coming from Trump, it was coming from the very people Tapper was trying to defend. And when your guest refuses to play by the script, suddenly the whole show starts to look like a bad improv act.
I want to ask you before you go, and congratulations again on the special, but there's talk promulgated by you about maybe you quitting the HBO show, about maybe not touring anymore. Well, you said something to Jane Fonda about thinking about that. Where are you in your career? You still got a lot of good stand-up, a lot of good jokes in you, right? Like, tell us what's next.
Okay. I am stopping doing stand-up just because I'm tired of touring, just because I've been doing it for 40 years. I love it. Look, I love nothing more than being on stage somewhere telling jokes to strangers. It's been my entire life. It's been the most consistent thing in my life. But for those people who say to me, why don't you just do it a little bit? You can't do it a little bit. Stand-up is like being a boxer. You have to be in training. You can't just walk up there and do it. So I've been in training for 40 years. I need a break. And I'm tired of the travel. I'm tired of dragging my ass out of bed on Saturday morning to go to some place after I worked so hard on Real Time all week. Maybe I'll go back to it. But, you know, I have a podcast.
The interview wrapped up in under 7 minutes, a glaringly short segment by any standard. Why? Because Tapper had had enough. The verbal jabs coming from Ma weren't the ones he expected, and certainly not the ones he was prepared for. Tapper looked visibly drained, his talking points falling flat, his narrative unraveling in real time. It wasn't combative. He was just brutally honest, and that apparently was too much for Tapper to handle. But here's the deeper issue. This is exactly what's wrong with today's left-wing media bubble. They operate in an echo chamber so insulated that the moment someone offers a different perspective, even someone like Ma, who's been a liberal mainstay for decades, they panic the second they sense you're not parroting the approved script. You're labeled a threat. They don't debate, they dismiss, they don't challenge ideas, they cancel the messenger rather than engage with uncomfortable truths. They shut the conversation down entirely. That's what happened here. Tapper didn't lose an argument. He lost control of the narrative, and when that happens in their world, there's only one solution: end the segment, cut the mic, and pretend it never happened. Maher's refusal to toe the party line exposed a fragile echo chamber of mainstream media. Tapper couldn't handle the pushback, and that speaks volumes. If truth mattered more than loyalty and debate replaced censorship, American discourse might just escape the grip of ideological tunnel vision and finally breathe freely again. And with that, we draw the curtains on today's video. If you enjoyed every bit of our take on Maher's war with woke, left, then hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this.